I've got something that I really want to say. Sometimes things just won't go your way. But don't you worry when this...
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. It's Archie from Archie's Orchids here, and today we will be doing a repotting of this phalaenopsis orchid into semi-hydroponics. So as you can see here, we have this phalaenopsis orchid, and the first thing to make sure before you repot any orchid is, does it have a flower spike? If it does, you're going to want to remove it, because what happens is when you repot an orchid, the orchid's going to think, oh no, what's happened, and it's going to start generating, well, trying to generate new roots to get itself back established in a pot. And if you have a flower spike, a lot of that energy is going to keep the flowers alive, and yeah. So if you don't really mind about cutting the flower spike, cut it. But if you really like your orchid and you like the flower on it, wait for it to finish flowering before you repot it. Before you go ahead and cut anything on your orchid, make sure that you sterilise your scissors or cutting tool first with either a bleach solution, hydrogen peroxide or rubbing alcohol. Before you touch anything bleachy or chemically, or as well if you're doing anything with an orchid, you always want to make sure you wear either rubber gloves or like vinyl gloves or synthetic disposable gloves, whatever you want. Just make sure you have some hand protection so you don't spread diseases and so you don't hurt yourself or give yourself a chemical burn or anything. So now we're all gloved up, as you can see, and we're just going to put them in the bleach solution, swirl them around, and then dry them off on an old rag or a kitchen towel. So now everything's nice and sterilised, you want to go ahead and cut your flower spike off at the base. But first cut any string or anything that's staking it, and just unstake it if it's staked. So now we have quite a top heavy orchid and we're just going to go near the base about an inch up. If there's something in the way it's kind of tricky, but an inch up. And you just cut the flower spike off there. Just put that in a vase of water or something if you want to keep looking at it. But if you don't, then just discard it. So now that we have our flower spike cut off and everything's ready, the next step is to unpot the orchid. If the orchid is very root bound, give the pot a good squeeze. But if it's not very root bound, such as in this case, all you can do is just grab the pot and grab the crown of the plant, and then just slowly pull it out until all the media comes out. So now we have this orchid unpotted and ready for the roots and everything to be cleaned. So now you can dispose of the old media. You never ever want to reuse old media because it could contain pests, it could have fungus, and also it could be rotting as well, which is one of the reasons why we do repot orchids. So after that, now I forgot to mention as well, after handling chemicals, you want to just change off a pair of gloves and get a new pair of gloves going. So now we can take a look at the root system here, and as you can see, there aren't very many live roots, which is a bad thing because there's no real way for the orchid to get water until it reroots itself. But the next thing we are going to go ahead and do is check the orchid for any good roots or bad roots. So bring you in a little closer here. This is the root system of the orchid. Now if you just take a look here, this root here, for example, it's firm, but if you pull it on it, the velamen, this part, the fleshy part of the root will come off. Now you just want to go through squeezing all these roots, and if they feel papery and thin and just horrible, there you go, that's an example. I don't know if you can see that. The velamen, this bit, has come off from the inner core of the root, and that's a dead root. Another way to tell of good roots is the ability for it to turn green when water hits it. So this root at the bottom of the screen is a live root because it's silvery grey when it has no water, and if you give it a spray, after a while you will see the root start to turn green. Let me bring you down a bit more. So see, this root now is going green here. That means it's a live root. So I'm just going to go ahead and clean up this root system with my, again, sterilise your scissors again, and yeah, we'll get on to that. So now I have cleaned up the root system. If the orchid has not got many good roots, leave a few dead roots on it as an anchorage. That's what I usually do. And so we've got all this dead root mass here. Some of it looks green, but it's half dead, so you can just cut it off. If it's kind of mushy like that and it just crumbles, then cut it off. If it's green, then it's obviously alive, but if it's like that, then it's obviously kind of half dead. So we've got that cleaned up a little. And next step is, you should really do this before you cut the roots, but is to wash the orchid. I usually do it after I cut the roots, just get off any debris that I've got from cutting the root. Alright, so that's now cleaned up. Next step is to remove any dead leaves as such. Just pull them off, you don't really need to do much, and they will just come off nicely like that. And now your orchid is ready to be potted. If it has pests, you can spray it with hydrogen peroxide. That will just kill them off, but that's what you really need to do. You can just check the orchid for pests and bacterial rot and things like that, and you can find another video online, and I'll probably post one later on how to deal with stuff like that. But if you do find mealybugs, spider mites, anything, spray it with hydrogen peroxide or use neem oil, and then that should hopefully sort out your problem. The next step in the process is finding a suitable pot for your requirements. I am potting my orchid in semi-hydroponics, which means basically you have clay pellets. It is all described on my previous video, but you have a reservoir of water, and the water will be wicked up, and it would hopefully stay constantly moist. And for this you want a pot with no drainage holes, just a regular old pot. Ideally you'd use a plastic cup, but I've run out of those, so that's the only thing I could find. If you're repotting your orchid into bark or any other media, you're going to want to use a clear orchid pot such as this one, which has a lot of drainage in the bottom. You can put holes in the side for extra aeration as such, but for this you're going to want 3 holes in the bottom as described in my last video, and that'll be about 1 inch high to let the water drain out. Alright, so now you have the holes in the bottom of your pot. You're going to want to put media to a suitable height for the orchid to sit on without the crown being too deep into the pot. So that will be too deep into the pot, and that will cause crown rot and other problems. You want the crown just above the soil level, so about there. So yeah, let's go. So now that you have some media in your pot, you just want to place the orchid into the new pot. Ideally with orchids you want a size up pot, but since this is the only one I could find, it's okay. It wasn't outgrown on this old pot, it just, the roots were rotted and it just needed a repot. So then you want to backfill media around the roots. Be careful not to damage the roots. So if it won't settle in like this, has that been out of focus all the time? Sorry. If it won't settle in like this, give it a good bang to tamper it down, and all should be good. So now that orchid is potted in there quite firmly. If it's wobbly, which this one isn't, you can stake it, and yeah. If you had aerial roots on it before, like this one here, you're going to want to leave them out of the pot because they've been adjusted to the air. And if you put them in the heavy media, like bark or this leca, then it will rot the roots because they're not used to having that much moisture around them. So you want to make sure those roots are out in the open, and yeah. If you've potted it in bark, then you don't really want to water it for about 3 or 4 days after repotting, because what can happen, you could damage the roots sometimes, and if you water it, that will introduce loads of bacterial rot. But if you're doing semi-hydroponics, because it's so airy, you don't really need to worry about that, and you just put water until it comes out of the holes, and then all should be good. Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you enjoyed it, comment, rate and subscribe, and hopefully you will join me next time. And I don't know what we're doing next time. It might be an unboxing, I'm not sure, but we will find out. Thanks for watching. Catch you later.